In the shadow of the bustling city of London, a sinister tale of the supernatural has captivated and terrorized its citizens for over half a century. Among the moss-covered tombstones and Gothic monuments of Highgate Cemetery, an eerie figure is said to lurk, its hypnotic red eyes waiting to ensnare unsuspecting victims. This chilling apparition, known as the Highgate Vampire, has become one of the most fascinating and controversial urban legends of modern times. But what is the truth behind this blood-curdling story? And how did it evolve from whispered rumors into a full-fledged supernatural saga? The first documented accounts of the Highgate Vampire date back to the late 1960s, when reports of supernatural occurrences began to circulate in the local media. However, even before the vampire sightings, strange events were already taking place in the area. In 1967, two teenage girls walking home alone Swains Lane near Highgate Cemetery reported witnessing a chilling sight: the dead rising from their graves near the cemetery's north gate. In another instance, a young woman claimed to have been awakened one night by a cold and clinging sensation on her hand, only to find prominent marks there the following morning. Reports also circulated about a tall man in a hat who was seen wandering the area before seemingly melting through the cemetery walls. By the early months of 1970, the situation surrounding Highgate Cemetery took a darker turn. Several animals were discovered dead in the vicinity, their bodies drained of blood and bearing what appeared to be lacerations on their throats. These gruesome findings fueled speculation that a malevolent supernatural entity, possibly the Highgate Vampire, was responsible for the grisly attacks. Witnesses described unsettling encounters with a tall, dark figure with glowing red eyes lurking amongst the tombstones of Highgate Cemetery. As the story spread, they fueled the imaginations of paranormal investigators and thrill-seekers who flocked to the cemetery in the hopes of catching a glimpse of the mysterious apparition. Enter David Farrant and Sean Manchester. In 1970, two charismatic and self-proclaimed vampire hunters, David Farrant and Sean Manchester, entered the scene, each claiming to have the knowledge and expertise to banish the malevolent being from Highgate Cemetery. Farrant, the founder of the British Psychic and Occult Society, and Manchester, the bishop of the Old Catholic Church, became entwined in a bitter rivalry that would come to define the Highgate Vampire legend. Farrant was the first to claim that he had seen the vampire while conducting a paranormal investigation in the cemetery. He described it as a tall, dark figure with hypnotic, glowing eyes. Manchester soon followed suit, alleging that the creature was a medieval nobleman named Walthoff who had dabbled in the dark arts and was buried at Highgate after his execution. The tension surrounding the Highgate Vampire reached a fever pitch in the lead-up to Friday the 13th of March 1970. Both Farrant and Manchester had made bold claims of an imminent showdown with the vampire, and their sensational statements had spread like wildfire through the local community and media. Earlier that evening, ITV had aired interviews with both men, as well as others who had reported supernatural encounters in the cemetery. The broadcast only served to heighten the anticipation, and within 2 hours, a mob of hunters from all over London and beyond had swarmed the locked cemetery. As the clock struck midnight, the group, now numbering in the hundreds, broke into the cemetery, igniting the chaos that would come to be known as the Great Vampire Hunt. Eyewitness accounts from that night describe a scene of pandemonium as people trampled graves, damaged monuments, and blindly pursued any sign of the elusive vampire. One participant recounted seeing a group of people surrounding a crypt, convinced that they had cornered the vampire, while others claimed to have witnessed eerie shadows and heard strange noises in the darkness. Some even swore that they had encountered the vampire itself, although their descriptions varied wildly and no tangible evidence was ever produced. In the midst of chaos, Farrant and Manchester were each leading their own groups of followers, each determined to find and confront the vampire before the other. The bitter rivalry between the two men only added fuel to the frenzied atmosphere as accusations of deception and sabotage flew between them. However, despite their best efforts and the fervor of the crowd, the night ended without any definitive proof of the vampire's existence. In the months following the chaotic events of the Great Vampire Hunt, the strange occurrences and supernatural claims surrounding Highgate Cemetery continued. On August 1, 1970, the charred and headless remains of a woman's body were discovered near a catacomb in the cemetery. Police suspected that the body had been used in black magic rituals, although no definitive evidence was found. Later that same month, Farrant was arrested in the churchyard next to the cemetery, armed with a crucifix and a wooden stake. A few days after Farrant's arrest, Manchester returned to Highgate Cemetery with a group of followers. According to his account, they forced open the doors of a family vault, guided by a psychic companion. Manchester claimed that he lifted the lid of a coffin, believing the vampire's body had been mysteriously transferred there from a previous catacomb. As he was about to drive a stake through the corpse, one of his companions persuaded him to stop. Reluctantly, Manchester closed the coffin and left garlic and incense in the vault as a precaution. The legend of the Highgate Vampire attracted the attention of not only the British media, but also academics and skeptics who sought to debunk the myth. Many argued that the sightings were merely a product of mass hysteria fueled by the sensationalist press coverage and the fierce rivalry between Farrant and Manchester. One theory proposes that the Highgate Vampire was not a supernatural being, but rather a case of mistaken identity. The cemetery, which was in a state of disrepair during the 1960s, was home to many nocturnal animals, such as foxes and owls. It is suggested that the witnesses who reported seeing the vampire may have been frightened by one of these creatures, whose eyes could reflect light and create an eerie red glow in the dark. Another theory attributes the Highgate Vampire sightings to the popularity of Gothic horror films at the time. The 1960s and 70s saw a resurgence of interest in classic horror movies featuring vampires, such as the Hammer horror series starring Christopher Lee as Count Dracula. The public's fascination with these films may have contributed to the creation of the Highgate Vampire legend, as people became more susceptible to the idea of encountering a vampire in the shadows of the cemetery. Furthermore, critics have pointed out that Farrant's and Manchester's claims were often contradictory and unsupported by any tangible evidence. For instance, while Farrant described the vampire as a spectral figure, Manchester maintained that it was a physical being with the ability to transform into a giant spider or a corpse-like creature. These inconsistencies, coupled with the lack of any concrete proof, cast doubt on the validity of their claims and further fueled the controversy surrounding the Highgate Vampire. Despite the skepticism and controversy, the legend of the Highgate Vampire continues to capture the public's imagination. The story has inspired numerous books, documentaries, and even a 1987 horror film, Graveyard Shift, starring David Carradine. Highgate Cemetery itself has become a popular tourist attraction, with guided tours offering visitors a glimpse into the cemetery's history and its connection to the vampire legend. The Highgate Vampire's enduring appeal can be attributed to the tantalizing mix of fact and folklore that surrounds the story. While there is little evidence to support the existence of a supernatural entity haunting the cemetery, the vivid accounts of witnesses and the sensationalist media coverage have ensured that the legend remains alive in the public consciousness. Moreover, the rivalry between Farrant and Manchester has added an intriguing human dimension to the story, creating a captivating narrative that continues to fascinate audiences. Their ongoing feud serves as a reminder of the power of belief and the lengths to which people will go to defend their convictions, even in the face of skepticism and doubt. Despite the controversy, inconsistencies, and lack of concrete evidence, the legend of the Highgate Vampire remains an integral part of British paranormal history. It is a story that continues to captivate and intrigue, inviting us to question our understanding of reality and our willingness to believe in the existence of the unknown.